I got a fun one for you all this morning because it's been sort of driving me nuts the last few days. This idea that I see some people in, not for Baldur's Gate 3 particularly, but I know that when I was reading some of the press for Star Wars Outlaws, the creative development team came out and said, "Don't worry, we're not trying to build a 300-hour epic RPG that you're never going to complete." And I looked at that statement and I said, what are people so afraid of? What is wrong with having a 300-hour epic RPG? I'm not one of those people who can't complete games. I always complete games. I might not get 100% completion, like I might not do that completionist arc for every single game that I play, but if I spend money on a game, I am going to play that game until it is completed. I do not have that disease, if you will, of buying things that I don't ever complete. That would be a waste of my money, and I do not waste my money. I'm very much a fan of finishing games. So I look at like the case of Assassin's Creed Valhalla as a really good example. I remember when that game came out, a lot of people a few months after release, it's too big. There's too many things to do. I can't. It's too overwhelming. So I'm going to use hashtag first world problem here because people complaining that a game is too big and has too much to do, I don't think you're meant to play the video games that I'm playing. Maybe stick to your Fortnite and your little 10-minute dopamine bursts, right? Meanwhile, there are those of us who do love huge, involving, flickering lights from power issues, as you just saw. But some of us do love those big, huge, epic RPGs, and that's one of the reasons that Baldur's Gate 3 is so appealing. You know what, guys? I'm gonna go ahead and put my feet up over here in the chair because I feel like this is gonna be a I got my shorts on, got my feet up here. I feel like this is gonna be one of those ranty episodes where I'm gonna sit here and just talk for a little while. So let's get comfy. I probably need to move my camera around and such, but we'll deal with it as it is. Um, the thing I just talked about in the video on Baldur's Gate 2 that we did the other day was one of the reasons that I think that Baldur's Gate 2 has held up so well over the years as one of the greatest of all time RPGs is the fact that you could do so many things. There were so many permutations. You could replay the game over and over and over and over and over because there was that level of replayability. Now, I've only logged a few hundred hours in early access at this point, right? There are people who have logged way more hours than I have. There are some of you out there who have put in thousands of hours into Baldur's Gate 3, and that to me is mind-boggling to think that some people have already put in 1,000 hours or more into an early access title. And I think that that points to the epicness of what Larian Studios has been building with this game. And I think it's pointing to the fact that it is going to carry on in the tradition of the Baldur's Gate series. The Baldur's Gate series has never been about being a quick and easy game to complete. Like even the first Baldur's Gate game, which had a fairly linear story in comparison to the second game, that was still, a 40-hour experience, minimum 40 to 100 hours. And then you get into Baldur's Gate 2, which had about a 60 to 80-hour main storyline and like 200 to 300 hours on the completionist end if you really wanted to sink your teeth into it and get all the different permutations and playthroughs and everything else. And we've already been told, by Larian is, that we're going to get 80 hours and it's going to be 200 hours for the completionist. And I know some people will like to point out like Owlcat games and say, oh, they already did that with the Pathfinder games. The Pathfinder games are 200 hours long. Pillars of Eternity games are 200 hours long. Yes, but also at a much lesser scope. Those were games that were developed by much smaller teams. We're talking teams of, 30 to 50 people as opposed to teams of 400 plus. Like Larian has transitioned over into AAA development with this title and it shows so far. And it's that video we did the other day on whether or not this is the new standard for RPGs or just a freak anomaly. I kind of think it is a freak anomaly in the sense that it's kind of like looking at what Peter Jackson did with the Lord of the Rings films when he did those films, right? Peter Jackson was willing to do what no other filmmaker had been willing to do to that point, which was, dive in and do all three at once. And then at the same time, New Line Cinema being in a weird and unique position to say, we'll support you in that endeavor and we'll pay for this. Um, we'll front you the money for three films at once, which was unheard of in the film industry. And yet, when it was all said and done, it paid off in spades. And the extended editions have gone on to prove over the years that people want that extended edition. They want that deep dive. They want the chance to live in and immerse themselves in that world. So, why are so many people afraid of 300-hour epic RPGs? Why are developers afraid of making the games? I can kind of tell you why developers are a little afraid to tackle that system because it does take a huge amount of resources and a huge amount of time. And when your publisher is wanting to guarantee ROI on projects, and you're governed by the publisher, you have to do what the publisher says. And the publisher is going to take the safe route. They're going to create that Marvel theme type game, right? They're going to do something that they know is going to be that tent pole thing that's going to get them the money that they need to recoup the 250 million that they spent. And that's not always on these massive RPGs. It's upon games that have a tight 30 to 40 hour line, 40-hour storyline, maybe 50 at the most, with a completionist journey of 60 to 70 hours, and microtransactions tied into it. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. I am not anti microtransaction at all. I think it doesn't matter how you monetize games. I've been to a lot of meetings over the years in game dev where people will tell you over and over internally, it doesn't matter how you monetize your game. Fans will flock to your title. If it's a good title, it won't matter that you've chosen to do it this way or that way. All that matters is you've made a good game. People will pay to play. And I think that developing a game that has, there's a lot, and if you read back the history of Baldur's Gate 3 in particular, this is a game that has a legacy attached to it. Troika at one point had pitched Baldur's Gate 3. Many other companies have attempted to take that mining pick and go down into the mines of Baldur's Gate and see if they can't knock loose another gem. And time again, they've gotten nothing but coal out of it. And Larian Studios finally managed to, you know, hit that glimmer of something enough so that Wizards of the Coast could be swayed that, hey, yeah, you actually do seem like you're capable of putting this together. Let's go ahead and take this for a run and see what goes from this. And I think one of the things that Larian is benefiting from is being truly independent in a way that a lot of other companies aren't. And so they can kind of do what they want to do with the license. Obviously, there are some things that they have to be beholden to in terms of, it is the Forgotten Realms, so they have to adhere to certain rules about lore and rules for 5th edition. But carrying on the legacy of Baldur's Gate means creating an epic game that's going to take hundreds of hours to complete. And I'm really, 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 really happy that it seems like it worked. Like everything I've seen from early access over the past few years has just screamed, we get it. We're the ones to do this. We are the right company at the right time. We are the Peter Jacksons of the Lord of the Rings films. We are the ones who are going to herald in this beast of a thing. Now, one of the things about the Peter Jackson films is that they inspired a new wave of interest in fantasy as a genre, both for film and television mediums. I would hope, and I think that there's a good chance that this is going to be the case. I would hope that Baldur's Gate 3 is going to be the game that shows companies that you don't need to be afraid of the 200 to 300 hour epics because players like myself will resonate to it and we won't complain because we aren't the Fortnite audience. We are not your little millennial that needs a 15-minute dopamine burst or we're going to move on to the next game. I may be of an older generation, but I will consume the hell out of products that give me value for my money. I don't find value in 10-minute microbursts of activity. You'll often hear some people argue, "Oh, well, it's not the length of the game that matters. It's the amount of fun you have while playing it. Is that $70 product purchased? and polished that you purchased. Is it polished or is it unpolished? Because 10 hours of polished gameplay is way better than 150 hours of unpolished gameplay. I am going to disagree with you every single time. Every time. Because as much as I love, say, Halo as a franchise, and there's a lot of multiplayer that goes on with those games that keeps them alive above and beyond the single player campaigns. Call of Duty is another good franchise as well. The single player games, the single player components of those games are only ever 6 to 10 hours long. And that's not enough for me to justify a purchase. I need there to be more. I was extremely disappointed with um, the length. Everything else about this game was amazing, but Star Wars Squadrons, as an example, was, and it was not a AAA price. It was, I think, $40 when I bought it, and I was hoping for something that was going to be in the vein of X-Wing and TIE Fighter and provide me with 40, 50 hours of gameplay at the minimum. And the campaign was 6 hours long, and I felt incredibly robbed for the $40 purchase because I spent $40 and I beat the game in like a single session, and I was like, I'm left with what? I'm gonna go play multiplayer and do these dogfights that don't ever change. It's the same map over and over and over. That's not how you win my trust and make me want to come back and buy another product from you. Now you deliver me a 200 to 300 hour role playing epic that I'm gonna get a minimum of 100 hours in on my first playthrough, and you tell me that the core story is 80 hours long, and you tell me that I've got, hundreds, if not thousands of iterations that can happen based on character choice and class choice and race choice and dice rolls and proficiencies and companions that I have with me and whether or not the companions like me or dislike me and what companions I have at any given time and all the different permutations that are happening with Baldur's Gate 3. Now you've got my attention. Now you've got me sitting up all perky. I'm all percolated, waiting for you to tell me what's next, honey. I need to know what's next. You got me all sorts of Twitter paid with that talk. 200 to 300 hours of gameplay. Oh my! So I am firmly in the camp of bigger is better. And yes, polish is important. The bigger needs to have sustenance to it. It needs to have sustenance, substance is what I was getting at. It needs to have substance to it so that it can provide me with sustenance. We'll pivot right there. What's up, everybody? Quick commercial break here to give it a shout out to our guild champions, who are the highest tier memberships here on YouTube: Ancient Entity, Assassin Gamer 94, Bubbleonia Rising, Crazy's Relative, Mujin, and Remedy. Thanks so much for the highest tier membership. And thanks to all of the members who support the channel, because you keep me doing this full time. You too can become a supporter if you're new here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss an update. Join as a member. There's 3 different tiers. We do lots of special stuff: private polls, private videos. You get a shout out if you're the highest tier membership, but you can also do one-off donations in the form of super chats on any live stream or premiere you see, and of course super thanks on any upload or YouTube short. Whatever you can contribute, it's great. Keeps me on the air full time, keeps the cats fed, keeps the homestead running. Anyway, back to the video, everybody. Right there. So for me and my money's worth, if I'm going to spend 50, 60, $70 on a game, I need to know that I'm going to be able to get 100 hours, out of it. Looking at Baldur's Gate 3, already having a few hundred hours in early access, that's already paid for itself in the long run. But going back to what I was saying at the beginning of this thing, when I saw that quote pop up from the Star Wars Outlaws folks saying they're not trying to purposefully build a 300-hour multi epic RPG that no one's ever going to finish, I just kind of chuckled to myself because I'm not one of those people who suffers from unfinished game syndrome. I buy a game, I play it. If I'm going to spend money on it, I'm going to sink my teeth into it. I think the only ones that would qualify for games that I might not finish are things that I get for free from like my Xbox Game Pass subscription or Epic Games or GOG or Steam. You're getting the free games that you get every month. I often don't play any of those, and occasionally I'll dip my feet in and do a first impressions, and that'll be the only thing I do is I'll get 3 or 4 hours in something. But in terms of purchased games, yeah, if I've spent money on something, I'm going to play it all the way through. So I think y'all need to get out there and explore the boundaries of huge RPGs and not be afraid of them, because there's these massive. I mean, I'd look at Assassin's Creed Origins lesser, but Odyssey and Valhalla in particular, massive worlds to explore, multiple playthroughs that you can go through. The Witcher 3 and all of its expansions being a very good example of that. Um, there's nothing to be afraid of, everybody, when we're talking massive RPGs that have hundreds of hours of entertainment. And while I don't know that it's going to become the standard for RPGs in the years to come, because it does take a lot of effort and money to build something of this scope, and not all companies are in a position to do that because AAA publishers don't always want to go off the beaten path, so to speak. If this game is successful enough, you will see the industry was reacting to Baldur's Gate 3 in a way that they reacted to Baldur's Gate 1 and Baldur's Gate 2, in the way that the film and TV industry reacted to Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings epic films. It's a watershed moment in history when whatever it is that that piece of medium is goes on to inspire for the next decade or more everything that comes after. And I think that's what most of us are hoping that Baldur's Gate 3 is going to do, is that it's going to be that watershed moment that makes all the other AAA companies sit up in their chair and go, "Oh, shit, maybe we should focus on big, huge RPG epics and not these 40 to 50 hour streamlined linear stories." There's room for both. I love all games. I'm not going to complain one way or the other if a game is shorter or longer, as long as I get my money's worth. And for me, that's always going to be tied to length. I think a $70 product needs to shoot for is like 50 hours. If you're asking me to spend 70 bucks on something, I need 50 hours out of it minimum. If you can't even deliver 50 hours to me, are you even trying, bro? Like, love to hear your thoughts. Drop them down in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon. And we will, of course, see you in the next live stream or video, because we're doing lots of Baldur's Gate 3, but we're also doing Starfield, Diablo 4, gaming news, TV shows, the 2 podcasts to do, and other stuff. So check out all the playlists. Join the Discord. Links are down below. Support if you can. I'll see everybody in the next episode or live stream. Peace, everyone.